Hey everyone, I want to talk about my hardest moments on my journey to OCD and anxiety recovery, all of the different setbacks I faced, how, I went from not wanting to be here anymore and being in the mental hospital, incorrect diagnoses, which obviously you have all the fears based around having the wrong diagnosis, but just for me, how that affected me. Almost on the edge of graduating grad school and then not being able to do the things I wanted to do in my life because I had convinced myself if my life didn't look a certain way, I wasn't going to be able to achieve the things I wanted and everything else in between. So this video will be a little bit more personal. I pulled out the paper again to write some of these down, and I really tried to think about some of the toughest moments for myself, including work, the police coming to my house and stuff like that. If you're interested in our coaching and webinar services, please email us at info@OCDrecovery.com, and we'll get back to you in a timely fashion. The one-on-ones are very, very categorized to the person, individual, and then we have a lot of great webinars, which we have at 8:30 p.m. UK time every single Tuesday. Sometimes we have them on Tuesdays and Fridays, depending on if it's a two-part series, RSD part 1 and 2. So, and as always, please comment down below and let me know about some of your hardest moments and if you need some help. The first one I wrote down was the beginning of my journey, which was in June of 2019, when I woke up in the middle of the night with ringing in my ears. Now, I always talk about my latching moment with my sensory motor OCD, which started with blinking, moved over into saliva and swallowing, which then that kind of lasted for about 2.5 years. Not severe the entire 2.5 years, but quite severe for about 18 months to 2 years, and that's where I ended up in the mental hospital. So I was in the pool one day. I remember it clear as day. And I woke up in the middle of the night to go to pee. And when I really look back, I realized just how much I was waking up in the night because I had this bladder sensation at the time, not knowing that was OCD building. A lot of hyper awareness of their bladder. Am I peeing too much? Am I not peeing enough? That sensation, always being hyper aware. It was trying to latch with hyper awareness of my neck muscles. I'd be in class thinking, man, I'm so aware of the musculature in my neck and how tight it is. And I woke up one night to take a pee and my ears were ringing. Now I have subjected my eardrums to dozens of 2- and 3-day loud techno music festivals, lots of shows. I had 12-inch subwoofers in my car mounted into the ground. So it was just, I've been around loud music my whole life. When my tinnitus latched, I have a cousin who's an audio engineer who said to me, it was a matter of time before you woke up with tinnitus. Tinnitus, we'll call it tinnitus for the remainder of this video. And that's how it started. And I went back to bed and I thought, wow, my ears are still ringing. And I woke up an hour later and my ears were still ringing loudly. And I had a full-blown panic attack. I ran into Erica's room. I was freaking out. I said, what's going on? I can't stop thinking about the sound in my ear. I was checking myself against the vents. And that was, up to date, the toughest moment of my life. I had been in grad school for 2 years. It was tougher than anything I'd ever done in grad school, any amount of exams, any amount of losing someone in my life. My father had not passed away yet, but I had known a lot of people who have passed away from drug overdoses, which hit my town really hard. This was the most personal experience I ever went through. This brought me to a level of darkness I'd never thought a human being could go through unless they were in something like a concentration camp or they were diagnosed with cancer. The reason why I talk about that is because I never talk about I don't openly talk about the emotional side of my suffering and how much I cried and how much I was down in the dumps and how much I wanted to kill myself. I usually come in my videos in a more contextual, educational standpoint, using the book behind me a lot and talking a lot more about suggested advice and recommendations. But this one is a lot more personal to me, and I really didn't want to be here anymore after about 3 months. Now, in the next 90 days, I spent many times going to the hospital to get my ears checked. I went to different audiologists. They would say, look, your ears are fine. As we know, with OCD and anxiety-based disorders, no amount of reassurance will get us off the hook. And I didn't find OCD recovery until July, August, September, October, November, about 6 to 7 months after that. So I was compulsively researching. Now, sensory motor became a massive issue in September. So June, July, August, September, about 4 months with the tinnitus. And I found a book called Rewiring Tinnitus by a kid named Glenn, which there was great principles in that book, but I just don't think Glenn covered the entire story because after watching a lot of his videos, I could tell now where I am today, and I haven't watched his videos in 3-4 years, but at the time that he was still quite scared of the tinnitus and the ringing being there forever, although he was much more comfortable with the sound. And I remember him specifically saying something about how he still didn't like the sound at all, but it wasn't that he didn't like it. I think he really hated it, which is totally understandable. So that was the first toughest moment for me. That was when OCD became extremely chronic. The second toughest moment was my November of 2019 4-day, 96-hour mental hospital stay, voluntary, Baker Act they call it, and the multiple times police officers had come to my house and or were called, which were about 2 times outside of the mental hospital for severe depression and anger and suicidal expressions, such as wanting to kill myself, not wanting to be here, running off in the middle of the night. No one sees that side of my journey except for the people who are closest to me, my wife, my family, my sister. My wife said she messaged my sister when she wanted to put me back in the hospital. Going to the mental hospital, now it is important to say that if I would have known the tools I know today, the chances of me ending up in the mental hospital were probably 0, maybe 1%. I can't say for sure. But as I didn't know anything back then, it ended me up in the mental hospital. And I wanted to kill myself. I was very suicidal. I had wrong diagnosis over and over and over again. And I'm not saying that in the way of knowing, oh, I know for sure I have OCD. I'm just saying that they didn't even think OCD was on the table. I said, look, I can't stop thinking about my blinking, my saliva, my swallowing. They were like, oh, this kid's manic. He's in the manic state of bipolar, which is understandable. OCD isn't easy to understand. I always use the definition, the term of, you can read 100 books on World War II. You could be the most researched person on war, but you don't know what it's like to go to war and end someone's life by stabbing them with a knife up close. If any of you have seen Saving Private Ryan, where he stabs the guy looking into his face this close, unless you've experienced something like that, you'll never know what it's like, which is understandable, and it's okay. We all have different experiences. So holding animosity against people who don't understand OCD, no matter how many jokes they make, has no effect on my life whatsoever. Sure, it's frustrating at times. I'm a human being. I can rant here and there. But in the overall grand scheme, it had no effect on my ability to make it to where I am today. The police were called to my house one time about a year 2020, year and a half, maybe 2 years after I left the mental hospital. Think about that gap, and I was still suffering severely in certain times. I wasn't anywhere near I was when I went to the mental hospital, but they had to bring backup because I kept saying I wanted to kill myself. I remember I told the police officer, if you would let me, I would take your gun, I would shoot myself in the head right now. And I was in a really, really low place. And for anyone who doesn't, who might ask, well, what is it like to have OCD? Why would you think that? I say, imagine if you woke up all day long and you like put something in your mouth. It's sitting in your mouth like that, but then you're having panic attacks all day and you feel like you can't speak. It feels like you're choking all day long, 24/7 with no relief, especially when you don't understand any of the tools. That was the second lowest place in my life, and I learned hardship in those moments. I learned how to slow things down. Now looking back on that, I learned how to face discomfort. I learned that lying to make myself feel better wouldn't work, not facing my fears, and that was really the biggest learning lesson from that, and all the hardships I went through in those moments. The third thing I want to talk about is the day in and day out work environment, bringing discomfort to work, not needing things to be gone, and starting a business. Now, I was so incredibly depersonalized. I had depersonalization and derealization. If you want to learn more about that, Paul David's book, At Last a Life, the 5th book on the reading list at OCDrecovery.com, has a whole section describing DPDR, and we have many videos underneath our acceptance playlist talking about my experience and other people's experience. I really suffered with DPDR for a very long time. And I remember meeting with different people in my business when I was building it, whether it was an attorney or a tax person, not being able to concentrate, then taking the mistake of trying to force the concentration. That was a mistake as well. Instead of accepting that it was more than likely not going to be able to concentrate, and that was a big thing too. So that was the main thing when it came to building the business. That really was a hard thing for me. I learned how to slow down again. I learned patience. I learned that things aren't always going to go the way I want them to, making mistakes, not needing things to go a certain way. And it's important to say that for about 12 months to 18 months, I suffered chronically. The severity of the chronicity of the suffering went down. Let's say arbitrarily it was a 9 out of 10. It was still probably a 5 out of 10, 18 months down the road, when I still had been working on recovery in quite effortful manner. I really was working on it. forcing it in many ways. So the low parts of the business of going to work, waking up in the morning and saying, oh my gosh, I want to kill myself. Oh my gosh, I don't want to be here. This is going to be so tough. How am I going to be able to handle the discomfort of going to work? Was a really, really tough thing for me. And that really built a lot of grit inside of my recovery process. And that was the third thing I wanted to talk about. The fourth thing I wanted to talk about was when my body dysmorphia became chronic. Now, my body dysmorphia was problematic in my life since the age of 18, when I decided to really get into fitness. And I had so many compulsive behaviors. If you want to learn more about that, go to our acceptance playlist and you can check out my videos talking about the body image fears. And I wanted to say that I thought I could handle it quite easily, but I was wrong. And I thought I could just get over this in a month or two. Body dysmorphia lasted for 2 years, severely 2 years, because there was a lot of minor compulsions I didn't want to give up. So I had chronic anxiety, low grade in the background, up and down, waxing and waning for the better part of 24 months, dealing with my body dysmorphia. Sometimes I had moments of great relief. Sometimes I had moments of severe latching. And what I learned from the body dysmorphia, the fear of being fat, the fear of not having muscle, and the fear of being physically unattractive were the big ones for me, which were all basically primarily the fear of the what ifs, was that the way that you look will not be able to substantiate any sort of strong confidence or self-esteem response. Now, that sounds counterintuitive to 99.9 infinity amount of the advice that we hear. Go to the gym, build your confidence. Get a better job, build your confidence. And while those have short-term and temporary and even medium-term relief, they're not actually getting underneath the core fear, which is the core fear of being overweight and the core fear of not being attractive. So I learned the most from my body dysmorphia latching, and this was really tough for me. I'd go to the gym, I would cry. I tell people, there's one story I remember specifically where I was crying because I was so upset with the way I looked. And it didn't matter how I looked. It didn't matter if I was lean. It didn't matter if I had muscle. It didn't matter if, when I get really lean, I tend to get extremely vascular. That didn't matter. It didn't matter what I looked like, because no amount of outside perspectives on your image will get underneath a deeply held fear of not having muscle and being overweight. The only way you can do that is work with acceptance doesn't mean agreement. That was where my strongest acceptance doesn't mean agreement perspective came from, more so I think than sensory motor. But it could have been similar, just lashed in different feeling type ways. And that was a big thing for me. I still work out. I still love bodybuilding. I still exercise a lot. I still try to stay in shape. It no longer has a hold on my life like it did. I think it's really key. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was not having a direct plan and the rigidity of it and the confusion and what I learned from feeling confused, what I learned from slowing things down, what I learned from not having an answer. This by far was probably the hardest thing for me because it spanned over all my different fears, which were panic disorder, GAD, sensory motor OCD. I had a lot of sensation based on my journey. Body dysmorphia, some death OCD, self-harm OCD, or car accident OCD, hit head-on collision. Slight harm OCD every once in a while, but nothing majorly. What if I got shot? What if I got killed? If he died in a car accident? Stuff like that. The number one thing I learned from the feeling of being confused is, number one, I had to stop asking for reassurance and venting. That really benefited me. I had to lean into the confusion feelings, because a lot of us don't like feeling confused. We show up and we say, okay, give me the plan. I want the blueprint. I want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Show me what to do. Give me the week time frame. Give me the hour by hour. Give me the books to read. Give me the homework I have to do. Break it up into quadrants. This is literally how OCD sufferers want their journey to look, like a spreadsheet. You know, you got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I want to feel this way at 8:15 a.m. I want to feel this way at 12:30, etc., etc. Why over here? And learning how to sit with that confusion and not need an answer was so important for my overall progress that it really brought me to a place to where I'm much better at leaning into discomfort. I don't know how my business is going to go. I do things to build my business. But there's a lot of rigidity on social media. You must be doing this. You have to do this. Success is the only thing that matters. This is really problematic advice. You need $1 million. You need this. You need that. You need to do more marketing. You need to do more referral marketing. You need to do more onboarding. You have to raise more capital. And yeah, all that stuff has a lot of applicability to your business, but it's quite opposite of philosophy, where you do things and you lose expectations of the outcomes, but you still work on the process. And I think that's really important. Guys, I was in a really low place for a long time. I had no hope. I showed up on my first call and was very angry. Rob said to me, we always joke about this, what if I told you it would take you 3 years to recover? And I said, I would kill myself. And he laughed and he said, that's why you won't recover. He didn't laugh laughing at me from saying that. He just said, look, do you realize how 0 to 100 you're sounding? Rob is very good at getting in there and changing perspectives. I think we all underappreciate what Rob has done for all of us. I know I don't. I mean, I know I do at times because we forget, because Rob and I are good friends. And we joke every day and we send each other stupid shit like TikToks and funny YouTube videos and 1,000 gifts by me. And I overload his phone and he probably wants to punch me sometimes. But I don't give Rob enough credit for doing this on his own and really showing me the way, which gave me the ability to show all of you the way of how to get better and how to recover. Thank you so much. There's so much hope out there. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more content like this, please let me know. Excuse me again. Just had breakfast, bacon, egg, and cheese with some hash browns. Fire. Made it myself. Of course it was good. I made it. How you doing? The Italian way. So, loser. Total loser. So if you are interested in our coaching services, please email us at info@ocdrecovery.com and we will get back to you. Remember, I know I come across a lot of times in a straightforward, tough love approach, but compassion and empathy is key, and it's really critical for changing perspectives. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.